for episode 11 to go right to the source, one of the most prominent builders, landlords, and really voices, because you've been very vocal. We've gone head-to-head on LinkedIn a couple times.
Yeah.
Episode 11, Entrepreneurs in Quarantine, Ben Cohen, Triad Group. Thank you for joining me, sir.
My pleasure. Glad to see you.
So, Ben, who are you? What companies do you manage? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, our company is called Triad. We've been in the property ownership and management business for over 50 years. And basically, we're landlords. We own our own properties. We own some properties in partnership, and we only manage our own stuff.
So now that this is happening, there's a lot of discussions, and I've tried to provide a neutral voice for landlords and tenants, residential and commercial, and it's really hard to stay on that line politically correct because I represent both groups. But I'm really excited to hear from your perspective. How have you been impacted? What are your thoughts on what's happening? Give us a little bit of your perspective.
Well, it's very interesting to me. I've been doing this a long enough time that I've seen markets come up and markets go down. This is the first pandemic I've ever seen, which really surprises me. And it's very interesting to see the reactions from the different people and the different tenancies and different operators throughout the industry. I have tenants calling me from large mega corporations taking an active role and saying, listen, we want to organize a hold off on our rent, and we like some of them are asking for discounts, some are asking for abatements. We don't know which way it's going to go yet. There are some tenants who just didn't send the check altogether because they can't get into their office to write checks or due. A lot of these checks are larger amounts. It's not a matter of just Interac e-transfers, and a lot of people are not used to operating ACH, and the cost of wires is prohibited, and the banks themselves are not showing people and telling people what to do, and everybody's in a big cash crunch. Everybody's hoarding. It was like the first couple of weeks when everybody was running around buying toilet paper like crazy. There's plenty of money that will come in. There's a lot of shrinkage, and a lot of the smaller companies are in real danger. In the past good times, it's been very easy for people to call themselves entrepreneurs. This is an acid test to every entrepreneur and small business owner and medium business owner. They'll be talking about this for generations.
I love that you brought that up, because this is going to separate the boys from the men, the savers from the spenders, the real from the fake. And a lot of people think this is a blessing in disguise with respect to the market in order to make a lot of corrections. What can you tell us about stronger tenants versus weaker tenants? Do you notice patterns in both groups? And from a landlord's perspective, what's the best way to deal with somebody you're a straight shooter. What's the best way to deal with a landlord with what we're going through?
I would say on a case by case, it depends which landlord you're speaking to. The institutional landlords are not the personal landlords, are not the smaller corporation landlords. And the only thing I can tell you is your very best tool in the whole thing is communication. Mm-hmm. Get on the phone, send the emails, talk to each other. If it's good or bad, talk to each other. I also am a big fan personally of verbal communication, because there's a lot of things that are picked up in tones and a lot of things that are fed back that do not appear in email conversations. So when you want to talk to your landlord and say, listen, there's a problem, I can or I can't, and let me try to do something partial.
Sure. So Ben, now that there's been a lot of, there have been some larger institutional landlords and owners that have put together rent relief programs and policies. Have you done that? If so, why or why not?
I have not done any policy because, in my opinion, there's no cookie cutter response to all tenants. Okay. Everything's on case-by-case basis. We're fortunate that we're able to maintain the relationships that we do with the tenants that we have, where people will call up and or send an email and we'll schedule either a phone call, or we're now in the world of video calling. A month ago, I didn't even have a webcam. And
yeah, it took us a while to get on this call because we were both figuring out what our codes were and our passwords.
Yeah, it's just the way it is. And you're a little better with the digital stuff than I am, but I've been using GoToMeeting and I've been using Zoom, and I got to tell you, on a side note, I'm absolutely in shock at the educational system. My daughter is doing Zoom classrooms 3 times a day, and the way the educational system came up with the digital is fantastic.
Sure.
The digital transformation is going to be a serious threat to landlords all around because the office market has now forced the floodgates open for video conferencing and working from home or working from somewhere else. Everybody in their laptop, everybody in their car, it's all going to go on. However, it's going to be a boon for the digital data centers because all the data is going to mushroom. It's going to be exponential, not just multiples.
So does this scare you, the fact that there will be this migration back home? Is this something that worries you as a landlord, somebody with substantial space in the city?
It doesn't worry me because we work as chameleons. We follow the market and always have. Our market's changing. When they came out with WeWork, everybody said, "Oh no, all landlords are doomed." Okay, it's just a new wrinkle in the fabric of what's happening, and this will create another new wrinkle. There's going to be a lot of retail people, in my opinion. They're going to have a lot of trouble, and that space is going to become either last mile warehouse or office, and it's just going to happen. Everybody just needs somewhere to go, and the new normal is going to be everybody wants to be somewhere close to home. In the urban and in the suburban. Nobody's going to want to run downtown if they don't have to.
Sure.
We're going to see how it goes, and the landlords who are going to do the best in this are the ones who can react and turn on a dime. I'm going to find the institutions are going to have a harder time with that.
So that you mentioned something very interesting. One of the things that I've always appreciated from you, from really the first time that I met you, was the fact that you're nimble. You run a very tight ship, a very nimble ship. You're able to pivot on a dime, and you a lot of the authority rests with you and a very close knit team. And a lot of people that I've been interviewing over the past couple episodes, whether it's restaurateurs, trustees, or people in business, they're all predicting a more leaner, nimble business community that can adapt to crazy things like this that were unexpected. Do you think you're well positioned to fight off COVID-20 or another pandemic? Would you change anything that you're doing now?
I'm going to change a few things because I'm going to call it disaster recovery is going to come, and COVID is going to be another natural disaster in my eyes, the same as the weather changes and the global warming. If we look at our weather for the past few years, our seasons have changed and our temperatures shift in crazy amounts in a very short time. And we have to be able to react to it all, and we've learned to adapt to that. The same way we're adapting to the crazy thunderstorms that we get, and the crazy blizzards and the crazy heat waves. They're all a lot more intense and they're all a lot more shorter-lived than they ever were. So we had to react, and now when we build our buildings, we allow for water retention that we didn't even think about 20 years ago. We just have to learn our world's changing, and we can either adapt or die off. We have two choices. I'm very curious what's going to happen to the capital market now, because we're in a very frothy position before where everybody ran out and opened a fund or a fund of funds without actually paying attention to the underlying property.
Sure.
It's going to be interesting what happens when these funds come due and everybody says, well, I'm conserving cash and the fund's supposed to end in 2021 or 22 or 23, and they think they can finance out. Well, those days are not going to be. The days of crazy valuations are going away for a little while.
Sure.
And we have to be ready for it.
It's a good thing humans are short-term, have short-term memories, and we'll probably forget about this, but this one will stick probably a little longer than most. Ben, what is your takeaway, something that has surprised you in either human nature or business that you've learned over the last couple of weeks, being in quarantine, being on lockdown? What's one thing that you can identify that you were pleasantly surprised about or you were disgusted about with respect to how business and people are acting in general?
I'm very pleasantly surprised at the way that people are accepting the social distancing for the most part. I've been to a couple of grocery stores and a few stores, and they have tape lines down, and nobody's complaining and grumbling about it and saying, oh, this is just how it is, and off we go. Sure. I don't see people running and cutting lines. I see people taking a deep breath for a lot of it. There are some people who are less patient and more high-strung, but that's always been. And when we look at how people have been going on and reacting to it all, it's pretty good. I look at our political leaders and I'm saying, well, our Prime Minister of the province, he's doing a pretty good job in my eyes. And I'm looking at the Fed, whether I agree with their policies or not, doesn't matter. They're out there and letting people know what's happening every day. It's not disappearing into the void.
Yeah, there's a transparency.
I think they know a lot more than they're telling us, and they're feeding what they feel we can handle. I don't believe for a minute that April 13th is the end. And basically we just have to get used to the new norm, and it's going to come in. I'm also under the impression that the government's going to be a lot slower to release the new powers that they've acquired during this. It's one thing for governments to help out and this and that, but they take on certain powers and certain rights and virtues that they have not taken on before because it was authorized because of emergencies, but I don't see those coming back after the emergency is over.
That's scary.
In stores
it's
now.
Scary, yeah. It's a scary thought.
I don't know if it's scary. It's just how things are. And they're under a lot of pressure now. They're promising all kinds of funds that I don't believe for a minute that they have. And we all know who's going to wind up paying those bills.
Before we get too political, I'm going to put an end to episode 11 on entrepreneurs in quarantine. Ben Cohen, it was important for me to speak with you particularly because I like you. You challenge me on LinkedIn in private and in public. And I always liked the way that you did business. So for me, one of the more prominent builders, landlords, somebody who's got a great business sense. So thank you, sir, for your time. And you got to teach us how you do this angelic style video. This is gonna be like a trademark thing for you now.
I don't know how they did this, but it's gonna be very interesting to see.
You look great, man. Take care, man. We'll be in touch after this is all over.
Thank you. Take care, dude.
Thanks, man.